So that should be my experiments in 3D printing screen, right?
It
Yeah.
certainly is.
Okay. So I'm a little bit nervous about doing this because I see that Fran is on the call and, you know, I'm not an expert in the 3D printing at all. You guys know that I've had this printer for a couple of years and I've really just used it for kind of coarse details, things that are hidden, bracketry, things like that. The only thing I've really done of any detail were these gondola cars for that ore loader. So I've always kind of thought about the printer being like a coarse tool and not really a fine detail tool. So if you're at the convention, Seth Newman and Richard Brennan and I did a presentation. We're working on a structure, actually a whole little mini scene for Seth's layout. And one of the signature things, if you will, for the building is this kind of ugly 1970s planter box, all this brickwork. And we looked at how to actually do that and actually make it look nice. So I did an experiment, and if you were at the convention, I was kind of showing it around. I went into Tinkercad and I did the brick planter box in Tinkercad and went and printed it out. And again, this was what I was trying to create and came up with this. So I thought, hey, this is actually pretty nice. I could actually resolve the individual bricks and the brickwork on there. The left-hand set of brickwork needs the bricks on top, but I had to get the windows in before I did that. But, I was pretty happy with the way this all turned out. So I got to thinking, if I can print bricks, what else can I print? So I've had, like all you guys, I got a bunch of projects that are kind of half finished laying around the workbench. And this was a scratch build patterned off of a fine scale miniature kit. And it's kind of been on hold because I wanted to put an interior because I had all these nice open doors, but I really didn't know what I wanted to put inside of it. So uh, in getting ready to do the interior, I actually needed a floor and some walls and didn't want to spend all the money on strip wood. And as I've gone to different places on some of these tours and cruises, I kind of pilfer these coffee sticks. And these are actually for HO come out to typically about a 2x12, a 2x16. And, they're fine for inside for floors and walls in my era, at least. And, the things are dirt cheap and you kind of get a lifetime supply for well under $10. So I said, if I can do bricks, then why can't I do crates? So I got into Tinkercad, and this is Tinkercad Live, and I made a crate. And it's kind of, the wood frame crate with, the individual boards inside. One of the things that Tinkercad lets you do that's kind of interesting, and that's what this little orange box is to remind me, is you can round edges. You can see as I round these edges more and more, I eventually get a circle. But what I did with the crates, and I'll show you why in a minute, is I came and I just very lightly rounded and softened all these edges and ended up with a crate that looks like this. And then in Tinkercad, it's pretty easy to copy. I'm doing this wrong. Copy and paste and move crates around. I'm doing the thing wrong, but that's okay. And you can see if I come over here, I can take a crate, I can play with the sizes, I can stretch it, move it around. The reason that I soften the edges is if I have a bunch of crates all stacked up, you can actually see the edges between the crates. And then I can come in here and I can take these individual crates, I can move them around. I can come in and rotate them around, and Tinker and the printer will print all of this. This little green thing in the back here is just kind of a something to bond all of these crates together. You know, one of the things that the 3D printer doesn't like to do is stop and start printing. If you look at these three top crates, they're kind of crenellated, and the printer has to start and stop the filament, and usually you get some artifacts and things like that that don't print too well. So the little green box in here just binds this all together and gives me a one-piece print. So once I've got the crates designed, and this is an older set of crates, I can just go ahead and print them. The nice thing with Tinkercad, with being able to go in and play with this, is I don't save any of the old crate drawings. Every time I print crates, I come in and make new ones. So I don't have the same box of stacks of crates every time. And here they are printed, and there's a little rough edges, but again, this is way zoomed up, and from looking inside, these things actually turned out really well, and they don't look like everybody else's crates. So I was pretty happy with that. I also had a project on doing a signal tower. So this is the base for a signal tower, and I wanted to put an abandoned little tower on top. And I said again, okay, if I can do crates, can I do clapboard siding? So let's give that a try. So I came up with this drawing, and I wanted to print the signal tower, all four sides, all as one big print. So, and let me get to a different file here. So this is my little test print with clapboards. And again, like in the crates, I can take these boards, I can move them around, I can rotate them, I can do all kinds of things. And one of the things I did is I kept the board ends, you can see over here, the board ends a little bit separate, because I really wanted to show off individual boards. So this was my little drawing that I showed you. And here it is when I printed it. And you can see that the printer doesn't really like these posts in the corner. Again, these were printed standing up because I wanted to print a four-sided structure all at once. And what I did actually is just put a hole in here. I'll show you the next slide, and didn't print these, but it was interesting experiment to see what the different print qualities came out to be. The left-hand one is the draft mode, and you can see it's okay, but all these board ends came out kind of really yucky, and they got better and better as I went to the higher resolution, but then you had all this stringing coming along. So once it was all printed, this is kind of what I had. And I had a lot of artifacts I had to scrape off, and I'm kind of unsure about the print quality. And you can see this kind of negative space in the corner to put a 16th inch square corner trim. So the jury's out on this, but it was an interesting experience. So then I got to thinking, once you start making things, you start thinking about other uses for it. And one of the things that I've always liked from Bar Mills is they've got some cast sidewalks. And I said, if I can do a brick planter box, then why can't I do a sidewalk? So I came in here and I used kind of the same bricks that I used for the planter box and just stacked them up and made a sidewalk. And I wanted to print it vertically because, again, the printer doesn't have to start and stop to print the face of each brick, which is what would happen if I had it laid down on its back. I was just assuming that the starting and stopping would leave a really rough texture with a lot of artifacts. And you can see in the drawing, I've moved some of the bricks around manually because each of these bricks is an individual thing that I can rotate and turn, things like that. And this is my first print, and it actually came out pretty good. You can resolve the bricks. There's some artifacts at each edge, but it really wasn't too bad. And then I came in and said, okay, well, I really need a curb, so I did the curb. I left this big circle here. This is how in Tinkercad you make a hole. So what I did is I took a sphere, made it a negative thing, merged it with the brickwork, and it gave me this depressed thing, right? Because no brick sidewalks are flat. They're flat for what, the first month or two. And after a while, the bricks really undulate. And I was doing the undulation by manually moving each brick. And that got to be a pain in the butt, frankly. So I said, what if I just, put a negative space in there? And this is that sidewalk printed. And you can see over on the left side of the bottom one where that negative space was. And even though the tops of the bricks are curved, it doesn't really show up too much. And there's some printing artifacts here on the front curve, but that's okay. So again, I thought this came out actually pretty good. I kept space between the bricks because I just wanted to see how things looked. I'm going to go back and try less or no space between the bricks. But I just printed this standing up and it came out great. And I had another print I had lined up because I had been assuming that printing this brickwork flat was really going to make a mess. So I said, well, I'm going to print it for you guys to show you how bad it turns out. And I don't think it turned out all that bad. So the top is the sidewalk printed vertically on edge. The bottom is that same sidewalk printed flat on its back. And you can see there's artifacts in there. You can see some stringing. I didn't clean this up. This is just spray painted right off the printer. But, the bricks look kind of crumbly and broken up and twisted a little bit. So I was actually pretty happy with this. And here's kind of a shadow view that shows it up even more. So actually, the brick tops came out flatter on this than it did with the 3D print vertical version over here. So I've got a project coming up for an old time building that has kind of a garage, and usually I've done wooden floors. So I think this garage is going to have a nice beat up looking brick floor.
A quick question, Earl.
Yeah,
Does printing it vertically take less time, more time than printing it flat, or about the same?
about the same time. It's about the same time. This is, the 0.1 mil resolution, and I think this takes about 20 minutes to print. So it goes pretty quick. And I've got this finger joint at the ends, which I really don't need because I can make this arbitrary length. I don't have to have interlocking pieces. And just like that planter box, I can do curves and everything to exactly fit whatever I need. But
The
yes,
interlocks are good for corners, though.
I'm sorry.
The interlocks are going to be good for corners.
Yeah, but I can go into Tinkercad and I can make my own corner and and interlock the bricks if I need to.
Yeah, but
But
you'd have to print that then horizontally, like the lower one. If you had an L corner on it, you really couldn't print that vertically. It'd be challenged probably.
yeah,
So
you can print to some degree vertically, but yeah, it's more better if I can do it flat, and that's why I tried it flat. So I don't know,
so
what do you guys think? Do you like the bottom set of bricks?
yeah, so just a couple other questions. Did you do a backing that's a solid backing with the bricks on the backing?
Yes.
Okay,
There's
yes,
about a millimeter thick backing plate.
yeah. So there's a backing plate there. And so the other question that it might be worth trying is trying ironing on the top.
Right. I haven't tried that.
And that might, that because that smooths out kind of any, because it's kind of like a toothpaste tube. So you kind of get the lines from the toothpaste tube of the
Yep.
printer,
Yep.
and the ironing just wipes everything with the head hot and kind of cleans it up. But yeah, that looks great.
Yeah, I was actually pretty impressed. I like how crumbly the bricks look.
Yep. No, that's good.
So that's kind of where I was with brickwork. So I will be printing some more thing, and I wonder if Fran is chortling at me right now because I'm sure he's been through all this and done all this. But
Not at all. This is fantastic. I'm impressed, and I like your approach to it. I couldn't pick from which one I like more. I'd probably lean a little bit more towards the bottom one here with the stringing and all on it, because that'll clean up easily, and the brick edges and corners and all are a little more
a little more weathered. Yeah, I need to come back and I'll clean all this up. But again, this was just hot off the printer, and pretty happy with it. So I also been playing with some concrete stuff. And again, this is more here's what I've been modeling as opposed to a formal presentation about how to do something. There's a bunch of guys on YouTube that do military dioramas. And usually they're like 1/35th or 1/48th scale. There's a guy I've been watching. He goes by the moniker Night Shift, and Central European guy, and did this base for a tank or something like that. And this is his version of concrete. And I really liked the way it came out. If you get a chance to look at some of his videos, he's scary. The first time I saw what he does, he puts together his diorama with the foliage, the rocks, the ground cover, takes a can of black spray paint, spray paints the whole thing black, and then comes back with an airbrush and starts painting all of the details. So the black is kind of appreciated, and then it gives him the shadows, I guess. Then he starts adding all this color. Guy's incredible. So I had a concrete project, and what he does is a lot of washes. And I thought, okay, let's see if I can kind of do some washes. So I got my jar of joint compound and some palette knives from Michael's, and along with all my drywall tools, and made this area. The interesting thing I tried with this, I really didn't care about thickness being consistent, and I wanted to have some undulation. So I defined the area to be printed with masking tape. So I just put down masking tape like you'd mask an area to be painted. I spread drywall compound over the whole area and came back with a really wide, like 12-inch wide drywall knife and smoothed it out. And while the mud was still kind of wet, I just pulled up the tape, and it gave me some really nice, pretty clean edges, as clean as I wanted for concrete. And then you got a nice smooth surface, right? Which I don't want. So I came back after it dried with a knife and also a wire brush. And I mean a heavy duty wire brush like you'd use to take rust off your muffler or something, and just beat on the concrete. And you can see I got all this nice spalling of the concrete, and yeah, it really looks kind of beat up. And that was my goal on this. So I came back. I'm sorry, let me go back.
Was the spackling dry when you hit it with the wire brush? Was it totally dry?
It was totally dry.
Okay.
I thought if it was still wet, I would just gush it around, to use the technical term. So here's kind of a finished view. I came in and, tried the washes. I was marginally successful, and you can see there's some splotchiness. And I would put a wash on, see how it looked. If it didn't look right, I'd take a paper towel and kind of try to blot it up and move it around a little bit. I think what happened is I started with the wash. I let the wash dry for a few days, and then came back with more different color washes. He'd been using like an umber as opposed to a black, which I thought was more rich and added richness. But I ended up pulling up a lot of the paint underneath. And I think what I needed was a more solid waterproof base coat to put the washes on top of. So again, a work in progress, but once everything was in, it kind of looked okay. So now that I knew a little bit about washes, we're going to go off to Seth Newman's layout. Remember the Adams family, remember Thing? Well, we got Thing to help us on this project. So he had painted the concrete, and this is again that Sims area from that building I started talking about at the onset of the presentation. And he just painted it real quick for the convention. It has a really thick coat of gray craft paint on top. So what we did is took a airbrush, this is one of those little cordless airbrushes, and wetted the whole surface, and then started putting on washes. There's an area that needed to be rusted. We wanted some variability in the color of the concrete. And the trying to do a random coloration in a large area is different for it to be random and not look splotchy or not look contrived. So we wet it down, then put different levels of washes on, and kind of ended up with this. And you can see the brush marks in the top section. So there's some work, but it turned out reasonably well for a first pass. This is an area where some dumpsters are going to go, and the ground is supposed to be rusty, and it'll all be colored with chalk also, but we really wanted to try to get some shading underneath and some variability of the colors and not have soft edges, because sometimes even when you do chalk, you end up with hard edges that are hard to blend out. And I think some was pretty reasonably done well. And we wanted also to have splotches where the trucks came and dropped oil. So that's still kind of a work in progress. So that's kind of what I had today, other than share this picture with you guys again who didn't see it last week. I did that little travelogue, if you will, a few weeks ago about going up to Sutter Creek and visiting the foundry. So this is a view inside that foundry in Sutter Creek. It's a overhead belt drive for all of the machine tools in the foundry, and just an incredible place. So with that, that's what I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. Bill, back to you.
Oh, thanks, Earl. Any other questions for Earl? Comments, thoughts?
That's great.
I'm just going to say, painting concrete has always been a bug. I've got a huge retaining wall that I've built for my Port Costa, and getting that right color, I still haven't done it, and I'm really interested in as much more going back and redoing it.
Yeah, it's hard. They say concrete is no particular color, and it's not. And I've been watching these videos, these guys that color concrete, and I still don't have a color that I like. If you watch Jason Jensen on YouTube, he uses a color called Cocoon that you buy from Michaels, and it's kind of similar to the old aged concrete that Floquil used to put out. And that kind of gives you that beige kind of warm color. And we use some of that in that the slides from Seth, along with some raw sienna to try to put the rust in. But
Yeah,
I still don't have a good color.
I've got pictures of the remains of that wall, and I've been trying to match it, but I've got to re-engineer it back to what it would have looked like in 1950, which is sort of, you got a unaged concrete.
Yeah, I just hate to paint everything the same light gray and throw a wash of black on it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the guys use oils and streak things with the oils, and I've got the oils, I just haven't had time to sit down and play with those. But I think
definitely good stuff. Quick question about your crates and the green binder you use to group them. How does that print out, and does it print out, and how do you get rid of it if it does?
It does print out, and it's in the back of the crates. It's like against the back wall, so it's only a third of the crate thickness or a third of the crate depth. So once the crates are printed and they're in a building, you kind of really don't see it.
I see.
But otherwise, you end up with 3 separate stacks of crates, and then it's just hard to deal with. You know, if I was doing highly detailed parts, then, you know, it's a resin printer and you can do the individual crates, but it gets back to what the printer does and doesn't like, and the printer doesn't like starting and stopping the filament, and you kind of saw that on the sidewalk a little bit. Bill, back to you.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I was looking. There's one I found it's something stone. It's like castle stone or something like that in the Krylon with a little plastic top that's kind of more formed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see it. It doesn't have a lid on cap on it. You see the plastic top and hard. You know, and if you go into Home Depot, and I thought it really came very close to concrete, kind of that little bit darker concrete, and so as a spray paint, because I was finding when you're doing, especially if you're doing things in O, spray painting works pretty well, you know, as a base coat, and then you get something that's not water soluble for washes. So
Yeah, we thought about that too, but this was inside an area that spraying Krylon probably was not politically correct.
yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, it's kind of you have to be able to take things outside to do that. So well, good. Thanks, Earl. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching this Coast Division eClinic. More Coast eClinics can be found on the Coast Division YouTube channel.